Hello and welcome to a new Nashville Masterclass. I am your host, James Debrame. Today, we're going to talk about how law enforcement and government officials look at the opiate and overall drug crisis completely wrong. Don't forget, I don't care if you like and subscribe. So do it anyway, just to show me. But when watching shows like Drugs Inc. or any kind of documentary show about drugs, it has when the police stop a drug dealer, they're like, well, it may not be much, but I feel that we've made a difference and we've gotten this out of the street. Or other cops that are, my brother is a drug addict, and these dealers, they've made a choice to deal drugs, knowing what it does to people's lives and it could kill people, and they sell anyway. So they're pure evil. And I love arresting them and getting them off the street. One thing about drug addicts is we love to be victims. Why? Because we're demonized all the time. So whenever someone else points a finger at the doctor or a drug dealer, oh yes, it was their fault. I was the sweetest, most wonderful person, never did anything wrong. And then one day this drug dealer came around and he forced the heroin on me. Or that you worked 5 jobs at a time and had a 3-story house and a wife with 8 kids. And then you hurt your back and went to the doctor and they put you on pain pills. That is not correct, okay? The drug dealer did not find your brother, your cousin, your sister, whatever, and force drugs on them. No, they went out in search of the drugs. Drug dealers look for people that are very obviously on drugs already. They do not hound people that look to be sober, because why go through that trouble? Looking at drug dealers as they are the enemy is a dumb way of looking at. There has always been drug addicts, so will always be drug addicts. Drug addicts look for the drug, and since government officials and law enforcement have made it illegal, that's the way to get their drugs. If there was no war on drugs, if drugs were not illegal, you wouldn't have cartel members being billionaires. You wouldn't have all this violence. You wouldn't have the prison system completely overrun and filled up. And you wouldn't have people dying in the streets. Because if drugs were legal, you would get them through, they would be regulated. You get them through some company, pharmacy. The drugs have to be regulated, so you know exactly what you're getting, and you can actually know the dosage much safer, and there would be less deaths. There's always going to be deaths. Alcohol's legal, and there's deaths every year from alcohol related injuries, whether driving drunk, cirrhosis of liver, alcohol poisoning. But if these drugs are regulated, then you don't have a drug dealer. You don't have this violence of drug dealers competing for space. You get them through a regulated company where you know the dosage, you know what it is you're getting, and through a doctor you can understand how to keep yourself healthy. Some people say that's stupid and wouldn't work. People are dumb because law enforcement and the government has given people this very skewed view of the drug problem. You think that making drugs legal, all of a sudden you're going to have people driving around in cars and killing each other. Looks stupid. They're already out there, and they're driving, and they're doing it unregulated. They're doing it not knowing what they're taking. They're doing it without a doctor's help. So think about that. You wouldn't have thousands of people trying to cross the border every day because of these wars happening in Mexico if drugs were legal, because you wouldn't have the cartel owning everything and scaring the crap out of people. If you lived in Mexico, you would try to escape to America. You wouldn't have so much of the illegal firearms trade. You would have so many less deaths per year if drugs were legal. In the way that law enforcement goes after these drug dealers, like they're sitting there planning on killing everybody, or they just don't care. You do have to understand when they say if they don't get it from me, they're going to get it from somebody else, because they're drug addicts. I know as a drug addict, I was going to get my dope no matter who it was from. Because there was no other way. And the more you keep drugs illegal, the longer the drug epidemic is going to go on. Every year they make stouter and tougher statutes on drug reform. It just gets worse. The deaths per year go up. The amount of people in prison go up. It's a fiasco. So very obviously, the war on drugs is not working. Making them illegal is not working. Putting people in prison is not working. In Texas, they made it a death sentence or life in prison. I can't remember if you sell fentanyl. And there's people on Facebook like, yeah, this is what every state should do. Why, stupid? You think it's going to make a difference? It's not. It's not at all. People are going to get their drugs, and by giving people, you are just making the problem in prison that much worse. You think you're being a crusader? You think you're doing this for Jesus? You're not helping the problem at all. You are making it worse. And it just makes me so mad when people like the governor of Texas make these ridiculous draconian laws, and there's actually people that herald this new change, life in prison. Think for a minute. Just what makes you think that it's going to change anything? How do you think it's going to make the problem better? Oh, well, they're going to think twice. No, they're not. No, they're not, idiot. And it makes me so mad. This is going on for so long, and there's still people who buy into this crap. You look at veterans and people in the Army, and I guess the normal thought is that they're these stand-up guys that would never do drugs. No, the Army and military is filled with drug addicts. What do you think is going to happen where you give somebody a high-stress job where the chance of injury is phenomenal? You have just made the perfect scenario for drug addicts to be born. And the richer you are, the higher up you are in the societal echelon, the easier it is to send your kid to rehab. So you think because your kid was a drug addict, but he never stole, that he didn't end up in the streets like those normal addicts. Probably because he had all the money in the world to do whatever he wanted. And if he didn't, he would definitely have become homeless, stole, done whatever he needed to get the drugs. And you will send him to this fancy rehab center. Well, these people on the street, they don't have that choice. trying to arrest your way out of the problem. It's been how many decades? And it gets worse every single year. It never gets better. It always gets worse. But still, for some reason, these idiots keep doing the same thing. They keep making the same kind of laws, and you idiots just sit there and eat it up and think, well, this is going to do it. This will finally show them. Open your eyes. I mean, if you really cared, you'd stop and think about it. You probably don't. You probably just want to be mad at somebody. It's easy to be mad at drug addicts and drug dealers, right? Because you're better than them. All the wrong things you do in life, at least you're not them. I think that's how many people look at drug addicts and drug dealers. But you're never going to solve the problem this way. If you're in law enforcement and you think a drug dealer is this evil guy, hell-bent on ruining your community, you're blind and you're not helping anything. When has it ever helped arresting a drug dealer? So somebody can't get drugs from this guy for a while, then somebody else moves in immediately, or they move to a different kind of drug. Nothing changes, does it? No, nothing ever changes. Arresting your way out of the problem, never. And thinking because you made this bust and got this dope off the street, well, that's a few people's lives. Say, no, they're just going to go to somebody else. You didn't save anything. You didn't save anybody. So you need to get to the root of the problem. Real reform. Have the government sell drugs, regulated, and put those billions and billions of dollars into things we need. Every drug addict could do their drugs, but have a way to go into rehab whenever they finally got to that point. They would have it paid for. You just go and do it. That easy. But then again, are you really about saving lives? Or are you really just about wanting to arrest somebody? Think about it. Because people don't like when you say make drugs legal. That just irritates them. You mean I can't arrest them, throw them in jail where they belong? Do they really belong there? I mean, really? Did you solve anything? Did you really save any lives? No. The way I'm talking about will save lives. It will definitely save lives, and it will save billions and billions and billions and billions of wasted dollars in the prison system, in government agencies, in policing a border that's wide open, and having to deal with immigration swelling inside the United States, and with dealing with these drug addicts. Think how much money that would save and generate and lives save. But no one really wants to do that. It's all about putting on a good performance for the constituents. And every time you give them credit, every time you applaud their stupid ideas that help nothing, you are part of the problem. And you give them all the push they need to just make dumber and dumber decisions and dumber laws. Eventually, we're going to have to make drugs legal, because eventually it's going to destroy our entire country. It is doing a pretty good job of it right now. People look at drug addicts, look at the drug epidemic, they look at the immigration, they look at these things completely wrong. They're looking at it the wrong way. They're looking at it through the way the government tells you to. The same way that people thought weed was evil for years. Deadly. You know how stupid that is? And the longer you keep something like drugs illegal, the longer it's going to be a detriment to all of society. It's not done society any good. It's not saved any lives. It's ruined them. Is exactly what it's done. So I think it's time for So I think it's about time for America and the world as a whole to accept that making drugs illegal has done nothing good for anybody. It has made everything worse. And I think it's time that anybody to know start educating anyone who will listen, the correct way to look at drug addiction and the war on drugs, and how society is moving inside these circles for real. What's really happening? What are the consequences of doing things the way we're doing? What are the consequences of looking at drug addicts and drug dealers the way that the world has been looking at them for decades now? And I think once the vast majority of society learns what's really happening and what it's really doing, I think then finally we can have an honest conversation about what the best way forward is. And it's making drugs legal and regulating them and caring for drug addicts. And people are always going to do drugs. You're not going to make it illegal and erase it. You are not going to be able to wrest your way out of this problem. You're not going to be able to eradicate drug addiction, drug use. You're not. You are just not so. So, if my camera cuts out on me one more time, I'm going to break it into pieces. So, as I was saying, the best way to deal with this problem is to make drugs legal and look at addiction and drug dealing is just something that's gone on since the dawn of time and are means to an end. They're not evil either way you look at it. They are just, for whatever psychological reason, are doing what they're doing, and to try to paint these people as evil and culprits of just the worst kind of the worst kind of people, culprits of killing people, murdering, and just being the worst kind of human being. They're not. They're just people. The addict wants the drugs, and they're going to get it one way or the other. The dealer needs to make money, so they're going to just give them what they ask for. They're not out there trying to turn anybody that's sober into a drug addict. So, with all these interruptions, I'm going to try to tie all these videos together. Me and my camera are going to have a talk with each other, and I will see you guys on the next one. If you're experiencing helplessness, hopelessness, in addiction, trauma, we'll figure this out together, or we'll die trying. Remember, late at night, when you're just laying there and you hear the sound of the train whistle, 2 a.m., everywhere I'm at, no matter what city, 2 a.m. when you're alone, you hear that lonesome train whistle in the dark. Well, there's a lot of us that hear that train whistle in the dark, and we're there with you. And at least on this channel, we know the other one exists. So we'll get through this together.